It is day 3 of testimony in the Dale Warner murder trial. I'm Melissa Andrews, a crime and investigative reporter covering the murder trial of Dale Warner. He's accused of killing his wife Dee in 2021 and then welding her inside a fertilizer tank where she was found 3 years later. So the judge started off today with a warning for the audience not to make any gestures or facial expressions because theoretically this could be seen as communicating with the jury. So we're back on the stand with Deputy Austin Hall, who is on body cam with Detective Kevin Greca. You remember him? He was the detective who was allegedly on the lam at some point for not wanting to testify or cooperate with these proceedings. So it's Greca, Hall, and Dale in the kitchen. Greca asks if Dale has any questions. Dale says yes, but he doesn't remember them. So Greca talks about this girl who took Dale's phone and the iPad. It's going to the state police crime lab. Dale keeps saying he can't make sense of any of this. She's taken off 100 times. They have 3 businesses. It can be stressful. He says what's different this time is that she's had COVID. Zach had said that some charges appeared on some accounts. They'd been monitoring the accounts, but then those appeared to be monthly charges. The deputy says, basically, we're going to square one. It's been over a week. We're just going back through all of this. Dale goes back over that night. He said, we're not going to argue tonight. It was about the altercation between Terry and Dale, Terry and Dee. So she says, let's sell everything. He says, it's not your decision. This is our business. Dee was convinced. Dale was telling people she was on Xanax. This was Saturday around 11 when Dee was at the soccer game. Dale says he got home at 8:30 that night. He went out to Finley. He offers for him to cook for Dee. She refuses. She keeps wanting to talk about Terry and Dale doesn't. He keeps saying he rubbed her back and she fell asleep on the couch. Next morning, he says she was asleep when he left at 6. He goes through the whole story that we've heard already. Dale says Dee's relationship with Lena is love-hate. They bicker about things, but then Dee gives her ice cream and Panera every day. Dale says it's been hell with Dee gone because he doesn't know anything with the school, soccer, or dance schedule. They're still going to celebrate Mother's Day. He says on a schedule of 1 to 10, this wasn't even a 5 type of fight. They've had much worse ones. Greca says for the first time, you are a huge potential suspect in this for what it's worth. And then asks Dale for a picture of his arms. Dale takes his shirt off. They photograph it. Apparently, in later testimony, they said there were no scratches or bruises or scabs or anything. Greca says if someone was going to harm Dee, they wouldn't leave her ring on your desk. Dale says she wears $150,000 to $200,000 worth of jewelry. There was something about a check, PPP check in the car. Didn't quite catch that. The detective asked Dale if she's used substances or suicidal. He says, I can't put that out of the realm. Dale says he's still trying to figure out who could have picked her up. And he has heard many rumors of who's my wife been with. Greca asks if she could be a lesbian. They say there's got to be somebody who picked her up. Dale questions whether Dee has been meeting someone at Panera and is gone for 2 hours. Suggests getting video from Panera. He says it's been choose your battles, don't ask questions. I don't think she's having an affair, but I've heard so many rumors around. At this point, I see one of the jurors keeps nodding off. Juror number 11. He's an older man, maybe in his 60s, and he kept nodding off. The questioning of Hall continues. Cross-examination. Did Mr. Warner know this was being recorded? Hall assumes so. You didn't see any scratches or marks or anything like it was healing? No. All right. And then they talked about some blood found in Greg Hardy's barn. It later was confirmed it was animal blood, and that he had kicked the investigators off the property on the 27th, saying he had stuff to do prior to them getting there. Next up is Dustin Li. He is Dee's daughter Raquel's boyfriend since 2016. They have 3 kids together. He says when Dale wasn't around, Dee was more relaxed and laid back. She was really uptight and watching over her shoulder when Dale was around. Dale would make degrading comments about her cooking, like, what the hell is this? This isn't done. This is burned. And comments about Dee's clothing loud enough to hear. About 24 times, he says. There was an incident regarding the Hummer in July of 2020. Dee asked Dustin to look at something she found in her Hummer. Dee handed him a small black device and said she found it in the Hummer. It plugs into the vehicle sensor that's like right by your knee in the driver's side. So next, he says the lights were on in the house late at night on April 24th. And then he says the door was always unlocked. That's something that we've seen the defense try to put in there. He said he noticed the Hummer and the front end loader were at the office. They went to the office because they thought she was there. So we've heard this story before about the searching and the searching. He also said Dale came in a few times and said not sure where she went. Said he was going to go spray twice. The kids said, let's call the police. And Dale said something like, I wouldn't get ahead of yourself. He has maintained a decent acquaintance ship with Dale at this time. Dale came over in July and talked in the living room, and he said, Dee fucking hated you, right? And she probably ran off with another guy. He asked to borrow the front loader and asked what was going on. This is Dustin asked of Dale what's going on. And Dale said, they're trying to fucking pin this on me. He said because he kicked them off the property and they wanted to get in the spray barn. On cross-examination, they established that Dee would roll her eyes at some of the negative comments. He had never seen it plugged in the tracker and had no personal knowledge of where it was found. He said no. They said, you didn't see anything unusual when you drove past the house? And he said no. And they said the doors were never locked. He said correct. Okay, so we recess at 11:45. I'll do a part 2 for the second half of the day. So this is part 2 now. We are getting into some more testimony here, day 3 of testimony in the Dale Warner murder trial. So we start after lunch with a discussion about whether Stacey Brody, who is the massage therapist, will be able to testify about what appeared to be bruising in the shape of a handprint. The defense thought it was speculative and wanted to get their objection on the record. The judge said he was going to dismiss it because it's a lay opinion and it relates to the domestic violence issue. So here comes Stacey Brody on the stand. She said that Dee came to her once a week for 5 years for an hour. So they formed a bond. About a year into seeing her, there was a large bruise the size of an orange on Dee's right hip. She said she saw bruising 8 to 10 times roughly throughout the 5 years. She saw handprint bruises on her upper right arm. The last she saw Dee, the Wednesday before she disappeared, she was very upset. It's the most upset she'd seen her. On cross-examination, she was asked, did Dee cry before? And she said, yes. And she said, did you document all of this bruising? And she said, no, I'm not required to. And then this is where the defense kind of fumbled a little bit. They said, you didn't mention handprint bruising in your previous testimony under oath. And Stacey said, I don't know. So she took a look, and it looked like she looked through her entire testimony. She was very thorough. And she said, well, look here, I did mention bruising on the arm back then when I was under oath, but nothing specifically about handprint bruising or it looked like someone being grabbed. And then it was smart of the prosecution here to say, to Stacy, were you specifically asked to describe those bruises? And she said no, which would explain why she didn't get into it in specifics as the defense questioned her about. Okay, at this point, juror number 8 asked a question. The counsel all got together and agreed not to answer that question. Next up, Stephanie Vocal. She was a person that was working in accounts payable for Dee, and they became friends. She said Dee took the Hummer frequently to the shop for service. One day she was very upset because the mechanic found the black box. She never saw Dee with a secondary or secret phone. They sometimes hung out on the weekend, never saw her under the influence of drugs. Most of Dee and Dale's fights were about money, his kids, or his dad. On cross-examination, Stephanie said that she found a charge on a credit card and investigated it on Google, and that is how they found out about the tracking device. Now, this is going to come into play later, so remember that she said that. This was a powerful get, I think, by the prosecution. On redirect, they said, whose credit card was the tracker purchased on? And she said, Dale's. She also mentioned a bump, like up here under Dee's hair, around December, January 2021. So Kyle Wagner comes up next. He provides IT for Dee and the businesses. This is Dee. He mostly deals with her. So they detail how many cameras are in each of these buildings on the property, in the kind of outbuildings and the office area, and what kind of cameras they are. And then he says Dale contacted him on Monday, April 26, 2021, which was the day after Dee was reported missing. He wanted to meet. They met at Hardy Farms. Dale wanted the surveillance cameras put back on his phone so he can access them on his phone. He wanted camera access taken away from Parker Hardy, Dee, and Zach Bach. Only Dale now had access. The passwords for the server were changed and Dee did not have access. In the summer of 2019, Dale called to say Dee was in the hospital with migraines and asked to clone Dee's phone. He never heard from Dee about a procedure or a request to clone, so he did not do it because he did not have Dee's permission. So then on cross-examination, he is questioned about if Mr. Warner ever had you put cameras in any certain location. He said no. Then Ms. Warner, Zach Bach, and Parker Hardy all had access prior to the disappearance. Mr. Warner did not. On April 26, Mr. Warner wanted to access the business cameras, but here was a point scored for the defense. On Sunday, April 25th, Mr. Warner would not have been able to get into the security systems on his own, right? Or change the passwords. And that was correct. A juror asked the question, how many cameras were inside and any facing south toward Munger Road? The answer is 3 exterior cameras. The scale camera could see a portion of Munger. Okay, the last witness of the day, I think, deserves the most time because this witness had a lot of insight into these key moments and actions that are being alleged. And I don't think, people have told me in their comments that they think he might have some more knowledge. That was feedback from the public on the stream. And that person is Dale's ex-son-in-law, Brian Bush. He was married to Dale's daughter, Jenica, worked on the farm for a couple years, said he had a very good relationship with Dale. Dee was hot and cold. Dale wanted to replace his safe. Brian was supplying the safe, not helping him get it in. He purchased a safe on Amazon in June of 2019 and gave it to Dale. Prosecution shows the picture of the safe. Trail cams were used for inspections of anhydrous tanks. Also, Dale wanted to put one in the house to see people coming in and out, wanted to see if anyone was coming in the house with documentation or papers in their hands. He did not set them up, Brian Bush. He just supplied them. Photos were shown of texts from Dale showing location for cameras asking for Brian's recommendation on where to place these cameras. Again, this is inside the home. He bought a tracking device for the Hummer in January of 2020. He was asked to do this because, he says, Dale saw Dee's Hummer at Meijer for 3 to 4 hours and wanted to know why. So this is our first time that we are hearing that Dale allegedly was skeptical of an affair, because if you remember, of all of the body cams that we've seen throughout the first few days, Dale has said more than once that he doesn't think that Dee was having an affair. But here, his former son-in-law, Brian, says he saw Dee's Hummer at Meijer for 3 to 4 hours and wanted to know why. He said he tracked her vehicle multiple times a day for about 3 months. Brian did, for Dale. He was accessing the tracker about 50 times a week. Brian says that Dale told him that someone found the GPS and the conversation had to stay between the two of them. He said he talked to Dale on that Sunday, 4:25, and Dale said Dee was missing, and they had an argument because Dale confronted her about an affair. This is the first time that we're hearing again that Dale was upset about an affair. He had always told the police, no, I really don't think that she would have an affair. So then he talks about how he breaks up with the daughter, Dale's daughter, and they're not close anymore. So if I had to pick a headline for today, I think it would be technology. However, this would be the close second because so many people clocked this and questioned it and want an answer. And I was included in this. I turned right to Sean Haggerty and said, what? There's a discrepancy here that needs to be addressed. And so it is. I told you about how Stephanie said that she found the charge for the device, the tracker, on the credit card statement. Well, then a juror submits a question. Did Dale ever give you his cards to pay for the GPS device? This is to Brian. The answer is no. How did it end up on the company card? I was reimbursed in cash. Will the purchase show Amazon on the credit card statement? He said it was on my personal account. So he's saying he bought the tracker on Amazon and then Dale reimbursed him. Now, a family friend of Dee's has said Stephanie was referencing the monthly payment, the subscription service on the credit card statement, and then this was just the actual physical box. That may be the case, but that's not what people think. There's so many questions out there on social media tonight about this one topic that it does need to get clarified.